instead of giving out candy this Halloween, give out some sweet pork belly bites. We need to start by making some pumpkin puree. So I've got my little pumpkin here, which I'm going to be using all of to make puree. So we're just going to nip the top off. We're going to slice him in half. We're going to scoop the seeds out, and then we're going to roast it just like that in 2 halves. You just want to get a spoon, go around, and it all comes out fairly easy. So I'm going to be serving the pork belly in the pumpkin. So the first thing I want to do is just nip this little butt piece off, I guess you would call it, just so it sits flat, or relatively flat. So once you've nipped that off, you just flip it over and just make sure it sits relatively flat. If it's not, then you can also shave some more off there, but this one seems to be sitting quite good. So now you want to get to the top. You want to cut about 1/4 of the top off, just like that, and scoop the seeds out of this one as well. Now we've got all our pumpkin prepared. You just want to give them a light dusting of salt, just on the flesh side. Now I'm going to roast these whole, so I'm going to put them cut side down, because I don't want to get a lot of colour on the inside just yet, not until they're soft. So bang the top on that one, then we're going to stick these into a 200-degree preheated oven until they're nice and soft. So the next thing we're going to do is prepare the pork. Now I picked this about 1.8 kilo piece of pork belly up. This is boneless, and it had the skin on, so I just went ahead and took the skin off, and I scraped as much fat as off of the back of this piece of skin, because we're going to be crisping that up. So I want to cut these into bite-sized pieces. Now they will shrink a little bit, so I'm just going to be cutting them up into about, I would say, 1.5 centimeter by 1.5 centimeter cubes. So just go along and cut them into long strips like this. Okay, once you've cut them into strips, just going to go along and cut them into little cubes. So I've got my pork all cut up now. As you can see, going to be using every part of it. So I've got the cubed up pork, I've got the skin which I'll crisp up, and this is all the fat that I trimmed off at the back. I'm going to melt that down and get some good pork dripping off of that. So we'll set this aside while we get our spice rub ready. Now we're going to make up a little spice mix. I'm going to make it all in this bowl here, but I'm going to make a fair bit, and I'm going to put some aside, because this is a very good spice latte mix that I'll be making up here. So it all starts off with some cinnamon, then we're going to go in with some ginger. Now with the ginger, I'm also going to be adding half, I would say, regular ground ginger and half of this Thai ginger. Now you can all just use the normal ginger. I kind of like this Thai stuff. It brings more of a floral flavour to it. And then to keep the purist happy, I'm going to add just a little bit of nutmeg. Not too much. I'm not a big fan of nutmeg, but I think it belongs in there. Then I'm going to go in with some allspice and a bit of clove. I'm going to put down in the description down below. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's going to be under, under the video. You'll find it. Give it a little mix up to combine. So this is actually a pumpkin spice mix, which makes pretty good lattes. So I'm going to take just a little bit out of here, and once the pork's in the oven, I'm going to whip myself up a quick little spice latte. So now we've got to sort the rest of this pork out. So I'm going to get the fat, put it into a little pot, put the skin aside for a minute. So now we're going to get the pork ready. So we're just going to go ahead and give them a good dousing of salt. We'll give that a good mix around, and I think it needs a little bit more. But I got porky hands, so my lovely camera lady here is going to give it some more. Should be good. Give another little mix around. We're just going to drop them straight into the spice mix. Give them a good dusting. Now we got some good coverage on it. So I got all my pork belly bits coated in the spice mix. Now I'm going to be cooking them on this rack, but underneath I'm going to put some water, because when this pork belly starts to render and drip in the pan, I don't want it to burn. So now I'm just going to stick this into a 150-degree preheated oven without the fan. My pumpkin was in there for about half an hour. Now the small ones are ready. They're nice and soft, but this big one that I'm going to be serving it in, it's not quite there yet. So I'm going to take the 2 small ones out, and then we'll stick the big one back in the oven until it's nice and soft. So this doesn't have anything to do with the recipe I'm making, but it's always good to have some pork lard in the fridge because, well, it tastes amazing. So we're just going to cut this up. So it goes into the little pot here. So we put a little bit of water in, and now we're going to put this on the stove on a low heat, start to render out the fat. Okay, so my pumpkin's cooled down now, so where I can hold it. Now we're just going to scoop it out of the skin and put it into a bowl beside it. So to make the barbecue sauce, I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil into a pan. Now fun fact, this is olive oil I confit some beef cheeks in, so there's going to be some of that good flavour going on in there. But I don't expect you to have that, so just use regular olive oil. And I've got a half onion that I've just diced up. Now we're going to put this on a low heat and let these onions start to caramelise. So I'm starting to get some colour on my onions here. And now I'm going to add some chopped up garlic that I've just minced down with the knife. You don't have to get too worried about mincing these down too fine, because I will be blending this once it's done. So get this back on the heat for another minute or 2 until the garlic starts getting fragrant. So the garlic's been in there for about 2 minutes and it's starting to smell super fragrant. Now we're going to add the rest of the ingredients, which includes some ketchup, some brown sugar, some barrique apple vinegar. We're also going to add some Worcestershire sauce. Now we're going to put about a tablespoon of the rub in we made before, some liquid smoke, some salt, and the pumpkin. So we're going to get this back on the stove and get it heated up, and then we'll come back. Now we've got it all mixed in. We're going to add some rum. Here's a bit of plum rum that I have, and we'll burn off the alcohol. So we'll just wait for the flame to die out, and then we'll get it back on the stove and reduce this down some. We just want to make sure we get rid of all this alcohol because, you know, We don't want these little kids running around drunk on Halloween. So now the flame's gone out. That took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. And I advise you to next time, make sure you clean around the edge of the pot before you start burning this because, yeah, it was starting to get a little charred. We'll get this back on the stove and we'll let it reduce for about 15-20 minutes. So the pork skin, I'm going to plop into one of the oven trays here. We put another piece of parchment paper on top, then we place another tray on top, and now we stick this in the oven. So I just gave the barbecue sauce a taste, and it needs a little something extra. And I'm thinking just a shot of dark soy sauce. So we'll get that mixed in, give it another taste, and that's just about perfect. Now we've got that in, we'll get the blender set up. Now we're just going to use my immersion blender here and blend this until it's nice and smooth. As you can see, I blended it up, not quite smooth as I want it yet, but it is quite thick. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water, just little bits at a time, and thin it out till I get the consistency that I want. Remember, this will thicken up a little bit more as it cools. Now I've pureed it down to the smoothest I want and gave it a taste. It needs a little bit more sweetness, so I'm going to add a bit more brown sugar. All right, then we'll get this blended in. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water to thin it out some more because it is still quite thick. And we'll mix that in, and once you got the consistency you like, we'll set it aside till we're ready to use it. Okay, so my pork belly's been cooking away, and it's starting to get a little bit on the drier side. So I'm going to transfer them all into the smaller container, and then we're going to cover them up, and we're going to let them braise for a little bit. So all the drippings that we've been collecting, we're just going to pour these into this container here. Probably don't need all of it. That looks about good. Then we'll get some foil. All right, then we'll seal this little package up with some foil. All right, now we'll stick that back in the oven. Probably going to take about another half hour, 40 minutes or so, and then we'll give it a check to see how they're going. Okay, so I've had my little pork bites braising away there for about an hour. Now it's time to sauce them up. So I'm just going to dip them in the sauce and then place them straight onto the rack, just like that. Okay, so we've got them all sauced up. Now we'll stick them back in the oven for 15-20 minutes. Let the sauce tack on. So the fat's been rendering away there, and now we're going to strain it off. I've already let it cool down some as well. So while you don't get a lot, next time you fry up an egg, try using that instead of butter. You might be pleasantly surprised. And when you fry the egg up with that fat, sprinkle those little crunchy bits over the top for an extra special little treat. So after the sauce is tacked up, let them rest for about 10-15 minutes, and they're ready to eat. The skin, I haven't done nothing to it. I've just left it in between the two trays, and it's absolutely perfection. We're going to take that out, let it cool down on a rack for another 10 minutes, and it'll be just perfect to eat. Don't forget to put a bit of salt on your crackle. That'll make it even better. Let's give these a whirl. What the hell could that be?
Trick or treat!
Here, have this instead of some candy.
Thank you.
You really can't go wrong with pork belly. Nice little sweet, tender bites. Wait, you almost thought I forgot, didn't you? That is absolutely perfect crackling. I wouldn't give this out to the trick-or-treaters. I'd keep this for myself.